You got charged on that hunt.
I did. Your dad saved my life. Not only was I doing something for myself, but now I was doing something for myself that I was passionate about. But at the end of the day, what I want to do is I want to help other people succeed. I want to see somebody else be successful. If you own a business and there's a competitor there, you can look at it as it's either me or it's them, or you can look at it as we're going to rise together.
Welcome to the Altitude Show. I'm your host, Dave Brinker. Do you happen to remember the time I stuck an arrow through my leg? If you do, if you're one of the thousands and thousands of people that got to watch that horrific video, you would have seen this man. He is a content producer, multi-world champion elk caller, an entrepreneur, someone who I call a friend. I've produced a movie with him. I have had adventures with him. And like I said, I stuck an arrow through my leg with him, and he had to carry me out on his back. Who am I talking about? I'm talking about Cody Jacobsen. Well, you're in luck. Cody is on the podcast today, and I'm so stoked. We talked about how to make a living out of your passion, how you deal with markets and high competition, how you go from having what could be classified as a normal job to something that people think is crazy, conservation, public land, private land, all things hunting, all things business, all things life. Check it out. Subscribe to our YouTube channel if you want to watch the full episode. You can on there. You can also watch clips from the episode on my Instagram, DaveBrinker_. Thank you so much for listening. Here we go. The Altitude Show is brought to you by Peaks Equipment, the world's leading technical, hard goods, and accessories brand for backcountry enthusiasts. From trekking poles to headlamps to best-in-class gators, Peaks delivers a system of products that work to achieve optimal performance in the harshest conditions. Don't suffer on your hunting adventures. Peaks enables you to thrive on the mountain when everyone else is going home. Visit peaksequipment.com and use code ALTITUDE for 10% off today. That's ALTITUDE for 10% off on peaksequipment.com. Outdoor Class is the new source of premium outdoor education from trusted and knowledgeable experts. For hunters committed to improving their skills, Outdoor Class is the only subscription-based e-learning platform that provides unlimited access to video lessons from the world's most respected experts. Learn from industry leaders like Cody Jacobsen, Randy Newberg, Remy Warren, and other experts across all the topics that affect you as a hunter. Make sure to follow Outdoor Class Official on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, and take your game to the next level by going to outdoorclass.com. You can use code ALTITUDE at checkout for 20% off. That is ALTITUDE at checkout for 20% off at outdoorclass.com. Cody, what's up, brother?
Hey, what's happening, David?
Well, I'm just kind of wishing I was where you are in Idaho rather than being this close to Portland at the current moment.
I was going to say, Idaho's not all it's cracked up to be, but when you compare it to Portland, it's there's some advantages.
I'm surprised you have internet out there in the boonies.
Oh, we got great internet. As long as I come into town. From the house, the internet's pretty spotty, but I've got an office in town for when I have to use the internet.
So, folks, Cody and I have been friends. I know I already introduced him, but Cody and I have been friends for probably verging on 15 years at this point, at least 13 or 14. Back from the early days of when I was at Sitka Gear, and
like the first day you were at Sitka Gear.
Yeah, you were probably involved before I was, weren't you?
I think so. Yeah. In fact, I was. I think I got involved in 2006. Is that when they came out the first year?
That's when they had the first. Yep, that's when. Actually, yes, you're correct. They had their first dealer, Schnee's, was 2006. So they launched that year. Yeah, and I came in 2007. Yep. I actually hunted with Jason Hairston that year. I'll never forget it. He showed up to camp with samples, and he didn't have my size, so I was the only person in camp that didn't have the cool new Sitka gear. And I actually have a journal from back then. I have a journal from back then somewhere where I talk about meeting this guy who's starting this company called Sitka Gear. And I wrote in the journal that I didn't like the name. Boy, I'm glad they didn't listen to me.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding. Well, you and I hunted together not too long after that, wasn't it? When I came down and hog hunted.
That was 08.
08.
Yeah, that was with Perry, our friend Perry Cremens. I actually just saw him the other day too, and he mentioned that you got charged on that hunt.
I did. Your dad saved my life.
Can you tell that story? Because it's classic.
I can't do it justice, but I get down there. I've never hunted hogs before. I don't even know if I'd hunted out of Idaho at that point. That might have been my first out-of-state hunt. And Brinker's dad was in camp and just said, "Hey, you got to be careful. These hogs, they'll charge you, and if they do, you got to just hold your ground until the very last minute, and then you just hop out of the way." And I'm just thinking he's pulling my leg and joking with me, and like multiple times while I'm there, he shares that advice with me. You got to hold your ground. Just wait until they get right there at the last moment, and then just sidestep them. And I'm thinking, yeah, right. They're just trying to scare me here. And then the stories of, people's legs getting tore up by these great big tusks in these boars. And anyway, the last evening that we're there, I ended up shooting a hog and hit it a little far back, and it ran up into some brush. And Perry was with me, and we went up tracking it. And we ended up getting right in on it before I saw it. And it was just that thick, was it manzanita or something in there? Mm-hmm. Just super thick. And I think we were probably about 7 yards from the hog when I saw it, and it saw me, and it was an immediate turn, and it came right at me. And I couldn't do anything. I couldn't turn and run. I couldn't do anything other than stand right there. And as it got right at me, I thought of your dad's advice, and I sidestepped it, and it missed me by inches, I think.
What's so funny is my dad has now saved 2 lives because of that advice. Because I think his friend, Eric. Yeah. Eric had the same thing happen.
Yeah.
It's so funny because every time I heard him tell people that, I'm like, you're so full of shit. Like, first of all, like we've hunted pigs like 5 times, but it's not like we're like professional pig hunters. And second of all, that's rare. Come on. I had that happen to me once, but I was it did it while I was already at full draw, so it didn't last long. Yeah. So Corey, you just got done last night, I believe, was the last episode of. You have obviously Corey's a content creator, basically a professional elk hunter and caller, but you have this series you've been doing the last several years called Destination Elk, and this year you structured it more like the show. What's it called?
Alone.
Correct.
Yeah.
And last night was the last episode.
Yeah, it was. And this is our 4th season. The first 3 seasons we just did basically a day-by-day type of a hunt where, the camera follows Donnie and I around our hunting group for like 8 straight days. We have 8 straight videos that come out that show, document basically every day. And we found 2 years ago that wasn't always the best idea because we had 8 days where we didn't get into any elk, and some really boring stretches of video there. So this last year, I'm a huge fan of the show Alone. And
you should do it. You should sign up, Corey.
Well, I don't want to do Alone. I just like watching the show and thought the format was really cool. So I said, we should do something similar with hunting where we check in with different groups of hunters in each episode. And not only is it going to introduce people to more like-minded hunters, more people who are passionate about conservation, but it's also going to give us more opportunity to share some action, and hopefully between 7 different teams of people hunting, somebody's going to be into elk every day and create some more excitement. And I think it did that. We did get some feedback that some of the people didn't like that we bounced around from group to group. They didn't feel like they got to spend enough time. I think they'd gotten used to spending an hour a day with us and weren't able to do that. But outside of that, people loved the format, and it was a headache to edit. We had 9 different camera guys. We had one editor, so poor John had to go through 9 different camera guys' footage and piece it all together into the episodes that you saw.
That's crazy, man. And last night, I didn't watch the episode last night yet, but you can be a spoiler alert for me. Did you didn't self-film yourself killing that bull in Idaho, did you?
No, I self-killed the bull, but I didn't self-film it.
No, so that wasn't all part of the episode.
No, we talked about it. We did a recap of the season at the end and talked about it. But yeah, coincidentally, I had 2 video cameras set up in my setup, and I had them pointed 2 different directions, not knowing which way the elk was going to come in, and thought as he gets close, I'm going to turn around and hit record on both of them. And it happened so fast, I didn't dare move once he popped into the setup there. He was only like 23 yards away, and he ended up coming to 12 yards where I shot him, but didn't get any of it on video.
Corey, I wanted to dive back a little bit into your history. Your dad, for those who haven't seen, Corey and I worked on a film together here 6 years ago, called The Linguists. And the idea of the film was doing a deep dive into the history of elk calling and elk hunting. And Corey was the main character in that. He got to go back and visit these legends, including his father, Rocky Jacobsen, Will Primos, Larry D. Jones, Wayne Carlton. So we got to work on that project together, which I still cherish. That was so fun, and you did such an awesome job. And I thought the end product was still like iconic. But you have a long history in the hunting industry, obviously, which most people know about. But I want to, and I literally don't know. I want to learn a little bit more about you, because you've been successful even before you were able to do this full time. And I think there's a lot of people out there, especially listeners and followers that I have, that are always wondering, like, how do these guys have these lives? Like Corey Jacobsen, he's just elk hunting all over the place, and like people send him free gear, and like, God, it must be nice, right? But you owned was it a construction company or like tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, actually, I got my college degree in mechanical engineering and worked for 10 years as an engineer in the semiconductor industry.
No way, which we need more of now.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, and the funny thing was, I am the furthest person from, at least then, I'm a little better now from a technology standpoint, but then I worked for 5 years in the semiconductor industry before I bought my first computer. I had no interest in computers. I had no interest in semiconductor industry. It was just a good job with good benefits and good time off and good pay. And I thought, that's what I want to do. And honestly, that's why I wanted to be an engineer. I had a good friend from Tennessee that was an engineer, and he came out hunting every fall. And he's like, oh, I get all this time off. I make good money. I'm single, all these things. And I thought, that's what I want. And after 10 years of doing it, I think the last 3 years were just dreadful. I hated going to work. I would wake up almost nauseous in the morning, knowing I had to drive to work. I would stare at the clock all day, waiting till 5 o'clock so I could leave. I had no passion for it. I had no interest for it. And I realized that no matter how hard I worked, I was making somebody else money. And so that led me to start looking into other opportunities. And I didn't have a whole lot of other experience in anything, but my wife and I had built a home, and we had a horrible experience with the home builder. And, just as far as scheduling, he was just very inconsistent, very unreliable, made up stories all the time about what was going on. And I made a comment at one point that if this clown can build houses, anybody can. And so when it came time to think about something else, I thought, I'm going to try it. So I got a construction loan from a good friend of mine and built a spec house. And this was in 2000, gosh, I don't know, 5, 6, somewhere in there. And the spec home sold about 2 or 3 weeks after it was done. And from that, another person came and wanted me to build a house for him. And so I built that one spec house. And for the next 4 years, I think, every home that I built was pre-sold. And then 2008, 2009 came along, and I've been so incredibly blessed with everything I've done. But, my wife at the time, not my wife at the time, my wife now at the time, she gave me the freedom to leave my job in the semiconductor industry and take a huge risk in owning our own business.
So you guys had dual income?
We did not. No, she was staying at home. We had
I see what you're saying.
Yeah, we had 3 kiddos under, age 4.
I've been through that rat race before.
Yeah, myself. That's a scary time in itself. But to leave, insurance and guaranteed checks and all of that to go do something that there was no guarantee, she's the one that said, if you feel good about it, let's do it. So that gave me an opportunity. I started while I was still working full-time in my engineering job, and it got to a point where I couldn't do both of them. And I either had to hire somebody to run the construction side, or I had to leave. And coincidentally, at the same time, the engineering job was offering a voluntary severance package. And I thought, that's my sign. And it wasn't much at all looking back, for whatever reason, it gave me enough confidence to leave. But now I shudder to think of what could have happened if it would have been 2 or 3 years later when 2008, 2009 came, right, and construction came to a halt. But fortunately, I sold my last home and the last lot that I owned. I'd bought out an entire subdivision and sold the last of those, I think, the night the bubble popped. And
wow.
I got a phone call like within a week of that from a buddy who owned assisted livings. And he said, hey, we're going to build 3 or 4 more assisted livings over the next 3 or 4 years. I want you to manage those for us. And so I stepped out of residential right when it collapsed and got into a steady gig doing that. But that also, seeing what happened with residential, I thought, okay, I know this isn't going to last forever. It's not something I'm passionate about. I liked it. I enjoyed it, and it fit well into my skill set. But what I really liked was hunting. And, I'd started actually about 2008 or 2009, just a little website, and it continued to grow, and I continued to see opportunities to monetize it and produce revenue from it. And doing that at the same time as construction led to,
so it sounds like a side hustle
100%.
led to full time, and then another side hustle led to full time. But I want to back up just a little bit. I always find it interesting. I'm curious now that you've gone out on your own, like that comment you had around security and that guaranteed check and the insurance, because that's always the fence to climb, right? Like, yeah, that's always the scary thing, and it's less scary if you're younger, but still scary, and more scary if you have family, right? Yep. But now looking back, because I have my own opinion on this, but I'll save it. Was it really guaranteed?
And that's the other thing. Looking back, no, it's not. I think in my situation, having a degree in mechanical engineering in the semiconductor industry, I could always get a job there.
Right.
I never feared that I wouldn't be able to get a job. So I think, there was some guarantee to a degree, and I've seen people that have been let go of the massive swings in, the up and down market, definitely play a role in that. But I think, I had that security to fall back on, at least, that gave me a little bit of confidence to be able to go and do something.
Yeah, it's weird thinking about fallback plans can be looked at a couple different ways. Fallback plans can hold you back because it spreads you too thin to actually be really good at something. But also, seems like a pretty intelligent way to exist, right? Otherwise, but I also hear stories like, do you know who Cody Johnson is, the musician?
Yeah, love it.
So I don't know the guy, but I watched him in an interview one time, and he's like, I did not have a backup plan. That was not an option, because I knew if I had that, I wouldn't do the things that I needed to do to make this right here happen. So there was no backup plan. And I have seen that in people that become great at one thing. But for me, it never interested me a lot because I actually find adventure in being involved in multiple things or like learning something new. And I like to have a backup plan. I mean, it seems intelligent, but if you look at those like elite level Olympians or musicians or whatever, it's like they put all their chips in one thing. And if it doesn't go, it's like there is no backup plan. They're typically, especially on the music side, musicians that go hard at it with no backup plan, they tend to, if they don't hit it or they fail, which is most of them, they don't have a lot of skills. I mean, they know some people, but they don't have like general skills necessarily, and
not for a mainstream job, to
they
try and go out
struggle.
and get a job. Yeah.
I even have friends that are SEALs that came out of the SEAL teams, and they got so good at what they did, they were the best in the world. But unless you get into security, which a lot of them don't want to do, it's like the last thing they want to do. They can't really take those skill sets and apply them to. My buddy told me, I won't mention his name, but he told me one time, he's like, I was literally trained to kill people overseas.
Yeah.
He's like, Walmart doesn't want me. So, he found his way. But point being, I think that's the smart way to do it. But the side hustle seems to be the common denominator with people like you, Corey. And it sounds like it was really important. Like when you were in engineering, you're like, gosh, I hate this. Like, and then you see these people like, wait, that guy has all the freedom I want. How did he do that? Oh, he owns a construction company. I can build houses. I know how to do that. I'm handy. Yep. So you start doing that. And then you're like building houses and you're making better money probably. And like you have some freedom, but you're like, I like it. Don't love it. Now that I'm a little bit more comfortable in this entrepreneurial world, what about elk hunting is really my passion, right?
Yeah, but how do you make money elk hunting?
Well, that is a riddle that you solved, buddy.
Well, and it's, and again, I credit it to my wife because she's the one that, and that's the motivation to do all of these things comes from a sense of responsibility for providing for my family and, wanting the freedom to be able to spend time with them. I was locked in, I probably looking back, I probably had more freedom, more free time when I had a full-time job, a regular job. And I mean that because when you own your own business, it's 24/7. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter if you have a storefront, if you have employees, if you're by yourself, there is a stress that is on your heart and on your mind 24/7. And, when I worked in the semiconductor industry, I would come home at 5:00. I'd get home at 5:30 and I was my family's until the next morning when I left. I didn't even think about work. I didn't even stress about anything. Nothing was on my plate. And as soon as construction started, it's like, okay, I've got to go take care of this. I've got to do this. I've got payroll. I've got this, and it's all hours of the night. I don't have the luxury of saying, no, I'm just going to hit the time clock tomorrow and go in, put 8 hours in, whatever I get done is great. The rest will be there the next day. So there's that side of it that, yes, I think more than freedom, it was flexibility. I think I had the flexibility to be able to say, I'm going to take off at 3:00 and go to my daughter's, school play, or I'm going to take off at 4:00 and coach my son's little league team. It gave me that flexibility to do that, knowing that then when I got home at 6:00 or 7:00, I was going to be in working, later that night. But the side hustle for me, I never wanted to just step away from job A and go to job B. Mm-hmm. It was always a transition. Mm-hmm. And I think that limited some of the risk. And like you said, there's people who put all their eggs in one basket, and you see those high-level Olympians that succeed. But what you don't see is the other 99 out of 100 that failed and didn't have a backup plan. And the crash on that is usually pretty severe.
Yeah, it's totally true. I think it's probably a little bit wiser to have a backup plan, but I also, I've never been the greatest at anything I do, so I can't speak to those people. Seriously, I mean, it seems like if you want to be the greatest at something, it's like all in or nothing. or you can choose to, be a little bit more diversified, and be good at some things. Someone asked me the other day, Corey, you'll appreciate this. She says, a friend of mine, she says, are you ever afraid of being good at a lot of things, but not great at anything? And luckily I'm comfortable with myself. And otherwise, if I was really insecure, I'd be like really questioning why she's asking me this.
Yeah.
But it's a true statement. I mean, I think most of us kind of fall in that category, right? Like I value, like I said, I love the things being a little bit novel. Like, that's one of the reasons I started playing music. Like I sucked when I started and I'm okay at it now, or like, some would call it good at it, but I'm not the greatest musician that's ever lived. I'm not Garth Brooks reincarnated, or whoever you like, but I enjoy it and I get I like adventure, and I found when I was working full time, even at Sitka, my side hustles were really energizing because it's like my thing, no one else's thing. It's my thing. And that's fun to, like, kids go to bed. Oh, I can work on Elk 101 now. Cool. This is fun. This is elk hunting. This isn't work. Like I'm just putting out information that I know and providing value to other people that they'll pay for. This is fantastic. And if it turns into something great, right?
Yep. Yeah. And that's really, it happened by accident. You talk about that and people a lot of times have goals and have plans. I didn't have a goal to grow an elk hunting business. It was just, I saw an opportunity and thought, I'm passionate about this. I'm going to do it. And if it pays for an out-of-state tag, coincidentally, I started Elk 101 in 2008. I went on my first out-of-state elk hunt in 2008. And, for me, I think that I just saw it as a way to justify spending a little bit more money on hunting. That if I could, if I could generate $2,000 or $5,000 or whatever it was a year on a side job, then I could put that into my hunting fund and, not have to. And my wife would have supported 100% if I'd have said, hey, I'm going to take money here and go and do this. But for me, I think to be able to justify it, I'm able to say, hey, I'm generating this extra income, from doing this little hunting thing I'm doing, and I'm going to spend some of that on a tag out of state. I felt better about asking her about that. And then once I realized, hey, there's some opportunity here, there's some revenue coming in, I can grow that to this without, it's going to take some more work, but it's not going to be detrimental to my other job. And then it got kind of like the construction and the engineering job. It got to a point where it was like, hey, I'm too busy to do both. I've got to taper down construction and get out of construction because I not only am I staying up all night working on Elk 101 stuff, I need to hire an employee or two, and there's no way that they're going to be able to self-manage on that. So I think, the side hustle was important for me.
Yeah, but there comes that time.
Yeah.
We got to ask the question, right?
Yep.
And did you have employees in your construction company?
No direct,
like,
just subcontractors.
Yeah, subcontractors. But you had people that relied upon your business, so that's a hard decision, right? Because you're like, okay, I've built this thing, and I like it, and it's going really well, and there's people that depend on me, but I have this other thing that I like more and energizes me more. That's now almost self-sustainable, and so that's a hard decision to make, right? You have to hurt people, and like, do what's better for you in that situation, right?
Yeah. And I think in construction, fortunately for me, I didn't have direct employees. It was just basically, hey, I've got another project here. Do you guys want to bid it? Do you have time to come to it? If I wasn't there, they had other work to do. So I didn't feel a sense of, gosh, these guys, they're going to be worrying about how to bring food to their family tonight. Right. The work was there for them. But I think, when I left engineering and did the construction thing, there were all the people that said, you're so lucky, you're doing what I want to do. That's awesome. Good for you. But then when I went from construction to the elk hunting thing, it was kind of the same thing. Not only was I doing something for myself, but now I was doing something for myself that I was passionate about. And I think that, you can work in a 40-hour-a-week job for somebody else, and that pays the bills, and you have all of that. When you do something for yourself, there's a lot of fulfillment there, and a lot of a sense of accomplishment. And then when you take it to the next level of doing something for yourself, and when I say for yourself, entrepreneur-like, and then doing it that way with something you're passionate about, it's kind of the American dream. I mean, it really is. And don't think for a minute, it's not like you're living the dream. I hear people say that all the time. You're living the dream. It's like, well, I'm living it 24 hours a day, so I hope it's a dream, because some days it feels more like a nightmare. But
well, it's anything that's human created is full of flaws and drama, and
it's work. At the end of the day, it's still a job.
Yes. And when people tell you that, were they also saying, like, in their heads, they're like, that's not good. Like, how can you can't make a living. You got to get a real job. You got to, it's the whole real job thing. But in your mind, you kind of proved it to yourself a couple times. No, I think I can actually make this work. I'm smart enough to make this work. And I think probably, now that I've known you for a while, I think one of your strengths is you're so detail oriented and intelligent about the way you approach things. You started analyzing all the data, like, I've made it work twice now, so I can do it with elk hunting too. By the way, there's nothing I know better than elk hunting. I mean, I can engineer, I can build houses, but I know how to kill bulls. So, yeah, I can make it work. I think when people say stuff like that, it's coming from a place of, it's jealousy and a little bit of resentment, and because either they haven't figured out what they're passionate enough about to pursue, or they haven't worked up the courage to pursue it. Those are the comments that come out. And I actually, one of the reasons I started this podcast is I want to help people like that. I want to show them, for the ones that are willing to listen and that do have a vision or a side hustle or whatever, that Cody Jacobsen didn't just fall out of the tree and hunt 4 or 5 states a year and make a living teaching people how to call in elk. It happened over the course of time, and with some creativity and ingenuity and dedication and some loss of sleep over the course of time and a lot of patience, he's here. But see, a lot of times when people become well known, people are like, well, God, it must be nice. Geez. It's like, well, like, what do you do right now? Oh, I'm a carpenter. I work in real estate or whatever. It's like, well, are you pursuing what you want to on the side for like 3 or 4 years and then getting it sustainable enough to go out on your own? Well, no, I don't have time to do that. It's like, well, you have the same amount of time as everybody else. So, yeah, you can say that to yourself. I hear that a lot. And there might be cases where it is true. Maybe there's health stuff or what. Everybody has different circumstances, but by and large, people have the time. They just choose not to use it. They watch Netflix. They sit around on TikTok. Whatever. We all waste time. Like, we all waste a lot of time. I know I do.
Yep.
But if you want to make a side hustle work, it seems like, I've talked to quite a few people about this now, it seems like the right combination is you got to do it after work or before work or on weekends when you have time, and you got to do really good work for a sustained period of time with a lot of patience. And all of a sudden you wake up one day and you're like, oh, I'm bringing in about what I need to a month to cover our bills now. Honey,
you okay with this?
Are you okay with this? And the answer is either yes or no or whatever, but that's the kind of that crux that you came to. And now, and then you start working. Elk 101 turns into this place where you are sharing information with people, which I want to talk to you about this because this is controversial, right?
It is.
You're giving away information to make people better elk hunters to compete with all the rest of us that don't want them to have the information. Right?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that. I'm making this up. I actually think it's a good thing what you did, but there are a lot of people out there that could say that, right? Because
say that
at that time, There wasn't a lot of good elk calling in the woods. Let's just be honest. It all sounded like shit, including mine. So, I mean, it was pretty easily definable between an elk and a human. It's getting tough, man. Like it's getting over the last 10 years. There's been, not even that, right? Whatever. There's been a lot of improvement, and a lot of it's thanks to people like you that share information and help people become better. But it does have downsides too for some people, right?
Well, and I think, and that there's so many things you touched on there, the jealousy, some of that. No, it's awesome. I had people, when I first launched the online course to help people become more successful elk hunters, I had a handful of people reach out and they're like, what are you doing? You're ruining hunting. This is going to be the downfall of hunting. You're teaching these people how to be successful. Success rates are going to go through the roof, and we're going to get hunting shut down because we're too successful. And I don't feel that. I didn't feel it then, and now we're 6 years into it, and definitely not the case. But here's what I think. I think a lot of people are insecure, and they feel that if someone else is successful, it takes away from their success. And that doesn't matter if you're hunting, if I have never hunted the west side of Washington for Roosevelt elk, and I go to Wyoming and I kill an elk, somebody on the west side of Washington is going to be jealous. But for no reason, because my success has nothing to do, positive or negative, with theirs, especially negative. And so there's a lot of that people feel. I see somebody post a big bull on Instagram, I'm instantly jealous, and I don't like that person. If I could go hunt out of state, I could do that. And I hear all of these things, but at the end of the day, what I want to do is I want to help other people succeed. I want to see somebody else be successful. And the main reason for that is because if there is somebody who's passionate about elk and passionate about conservation, they're going to do everything they can to perpetuate that. And we see it now. I mean, we're in a battle politically on hunting and being able to sustain that. And we're seeing opportunities being taken away. Especially this year, there was a ton of legislative stuff that tried taking away hunting opportunity all across the U.S. And the more voices we have on our side, the better we're going to be able to withstand those storms. And so in my mind, I'm not lowering success rate. I am creating more people who are passionate about something, and then those people are going to get involved. And, Randy Newberg talks all the time. Everybody's so worried about there's one pie, and I want my piece of pie. And when somebody else comes into that restaurant, they're going to be taking part of my pie, and my pie is getting smaller and smaller. But what we're really doing is bringing these people in to help us build a bigger pie and to build a bigger, resource here. The more hunters there are, the more money that's going into conservation, the more effort and energy that's going into conservation, and the more elk, hopefully, that are on the landscape. Hopefully there's more elk on the landscape in 10 years than there was 10 years ago. And that provides more opportunity for the increase in hunters without ever affecting anybody else's success or opportunity.
Yeah, you got to, but in order to think that way, you got to release selfishness.
Yeah.
And we're all guilty of looking at Instagram and getting jealous and trying to think of excuses as to why they're successful and I'm not. Like, oh yeah, but they're bugling in Idaho right now. They're not bugling out here. No, there's not a bull bugling out here. It's not the same. We all do it. But it's simply not the truth. And that pie thing, I love what Randy says. I think about that all the time. It happens in business. I think just naturally we're competitive or something. Because I see it in business too, and I won't obviously get the minutiae of everything, but like even in the hunting industry, in my day at Sitka, you had Sitka, you had Kuyu, you had whatever else, and you kind of when you are 100% member of a tribe, you kind of just inherently believe that if I see a picture of Kuyu on the cover of a magazine, that's bad. Kuyu bad. Must call that magazine and ask them why they put Kuyu on the cover of magazine. It's like, well, is it that big of a deal? Like, I mean, our sales are going up, their sales are going up. Who cares? But it's just natural business competitiveness. But I think the same transfers over to hunting. And like you see some guy, even like I see this a lot too, like a first year hunter kills a big bull, maybe a bigger bull than you've ever killed. That hurts a little bit. You're like, dude, oh yeah, it must be nice. But at the same time, like really what you should be feeling is like, man, that's pretty cool. But I think it's just natural human reaction. So when people see you, like it's an easy scapegoat. Well, I would be more successful if Corey wasn't giving away free information, because in my area, there's a whole bunch of Corey wannabes just bugling every basin to death. And now the elk don't talk anymore. And it's like, but if you look at that person's record, the record really hasn't changed very much. They weren't killing stuff before the bugling happened, and they weren't killing, that's what, in a lot of cases, what happens. I hate to be so honest, but it's the truth. So
no, it is. And it's been that way. It's not just in the last 10 years or anything, way back. I started bow hunting I was of legal hunting age in 1986, and I started shooting a bow in 1982. And clear back then, there were people complaining about logging. They went and logged my hunting area, and they ruined it.
Yeah.
And then you get the wolves. Everybody was blaming the wolves. Well, and there's some legitimacy to all of these arguments, but that's life. You're going to have obstacles. You're going to have challenges. I think the thing to do is figure out how to overcome that. And most people are completely fine just sitting back complaining about something rather than going out and putting in a little extra energy and finding a way to overcome that. And so, whether you blame your success on somebody else or on whatever factor it is, there's no reason to blame. Well, I guess you're blaming your failure, not blaming your success, your lack of success. But instead of blaming failure, go out and find success.
It seems like a common thread with people like that they don't want to improve like proactively, but they want to complain about having the same results.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's that type of person. It's like, well, hey, maybe you should go to like read a book or like watch some videos, improve. If you're not being successful at something, you can improve. There is that option. Or you can sit there in the same place doing the same things with the same results and blame other people for it, which happens a lot. That's definitely the lazy way out. Like you've had real obstacles in your life with, I don't know. Do you talk publicly about Lyme's disease?
Yeah, we can. Not a lot of people know, but
there's all of us faced obstacles, and you can either choose to sit there and just let the obstacle take over your life, or you can, decide proactively to do something about it. And elk hunting is no different. Business is no different, right?
Yep. Yeah, it's awesome that you're doing this podcast, because I thought years ago I would love to do a podcast that talks about business and the similarities between business and hunting. And I think you just nailed it there. I mean, you're going to have disappointments, you're going to have failures, you're going to have hardships, you're going to have people who are jealous, you're going to have people who support you, people who don't support you. And that goes in both of those areas. But at the end of the day, you've got to believe in what you're doing enough to be able to overcome those challenges and have a vision for what you want. And whether, and we talk about success, and success is completely user defined in my mind. For an elk hunter, I think a lot of times we say, well, he's a successful elk hunter. Does that mean that he fills his tag every year? Does that mean that he kills 400-inch bulls every year? That's up to each person. I had a guy make a comment a couple of years ago. I shot a little 5x6 bull on like day 10 of the hardest hunting I think I've ever experienced. I was ecstatic, not because I'm bloodthirsty and want to kill something. I put meat in the freezer, and I was happy about that. And he questioned why somebody who's been hunting so long would ever consider shooting that. In his mind, he hasn't been hunting nearly as long, and he would never even consider shooting something that wasn't a 6-point. And he was trying to stir up some controversy there. And fortunately, everybody jumped in and said, dude, what are you talking about? If he wants to shoot a cow or a spike or whatever, as long as it's legal, who are you to question what anybody's doing? And I
Oh
think it
man.
really comes from, again, insecurity. And we talk about, you talk about Sitka and Kuyu. I think for a lot of people that we'll just say Sitka, they feel like they've done the research and they're wearing the best gear that matches what they want to do. And when somebody else wears a different camouflage pattern or different gear, they feel like they're being questioned. Like, well, I made a decision and this is the best gear.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're wearing that saying it's the best gear. And, I'm just not secure enough to be okay with that. And I really think it's that way in business. There's just so many insecurities out there. And I have them. I'm a people pleaser. I hate when somebody says something negative about me. Mm-hmm. I want to be everybody's friend. I want to be the nice guy. I want to do that. And I was listening to a phenomenal podcast on Order of Man with Tim Tebow. Mm-hmm. And Tim Tebow's dad just basically told him, and it sounds like he's the same, a people pleaser. And he said, you can't try to earn everyone's likes. You need to try to earn their respect. And I struggle, a lot of times because I want everybody to like me. And, Tim Tebow told his dad, if people could just meet me, I think they would like me. But people always say these negative things, but they've never even met me. And a lot of times we get so focused on that this person comes out of the woodwork, don't even know his name, don't even know who he is. And he says something negative, whatever it is, whether it's true or not, it hurts our feelings sometimes. And we have to learn to separate that. And in business, I see it a ton, especially in entrepreneurs who are so passionate about what they do that any bit of competition is bad. Anybody who questions their success or their product or their business, they take it personal. And you've got to learn to separate that and be able to separate the personal from, hey, is that constructive? Can I make that criticism constructive? Am I doing something, or is there something I should be doing or could be doing to improve in that area?
Yeah, absolutely. And also, it's okay for multiple businesses to succeed. It actually is going to happen whether you like it or not. I have a secret to tell everybody. There's always, my dad told me when I was very young, no matter how tough you get, there's always somebody tougher. Yep. And I think it goes, no matter how many big bulls you've killed, there's someone that's killed more. No matter how many millions of dollars you're doing in business or how great you think your business is, someday there will be a business that beats you. Period. Yep. End of story. So you can either choose to deal with that, or you can live in this fantasy world that everything that comes about is a threat. And to me, when I see entrepreneurs do that, now that I used to do the same thing, so I'm not saying I've never done that.
Yeah.
But as I've gotten older, I've gotten a little better at being like, it won't affect our line graph at all. My line graph and my business, like on my metrics, however you want to measure it, revenue, profit, however you measure your business, if you're conducting business correctly and you build a great product and you build great relationships with your customers and you build a brand that people want to associate with, your line graph that you look at on your Excel spreadsheet will continue to go up no matter how many new businesses launch or no matter what your competitors are doing. That's the funny thing about it. Like you fall into this nasty cycle. Well, they're doing that. We need to have a meeting. Someone's doing something. It's like, well, do we, or just, is it okay that they're doing it? And they're going to do it whether we have a meeting or not. So, and so the hunting thing, I agree with you, Corey. And that is one of the reasons I started this, was to talk about one of the reasons I think I can be successful at business, in a world where, like, entrepreneurial world, where you're constantly living in the gray and like there's constant unknowns and it's kind of an adventure, is because I grew up out in the woods with a BB gun, and over the course of time have spent a lot of time hunting in an environment where 99.9% of the time it's failure and it's uncomfortable and actually not very fun. But when you do find that success, whatever you're looking for, whether that be a dead animal or whatever, it's worth it. And then you want to start all over again, because the reality is all you really crave is the adventure. And so I think there's tons of similarities that could be talked about for hours and hours and hours and hours. And I think you're a great example of that, man. Like, your skills that you've learned in the woods from childhood to now, I guarantee have helped you be a successful business person.
Oh, yeah. No, and that's, I think the hard part is sometimes we do look at people and we say, gosh, it must be nice. Or, he's so lucky. I'm a normal person from start to finish. Today even, I struggle the same as anybody else when it comes to elk hunting. And I grew up, I lived in elk country, so I got to hunt a lot as a child, as a youth growing up. I didn't kill my first elk until I was 21 years old. I hunted for 9 seasons before I killed an elk. I had a dad who was an outfitter. During that time, he was a world champion elk caller. I was a world champion elk caller before I killed an elk. So, it's not like it's just, it's come easy. He grew up hunting on some private ranch somewhere. And, I've never killed an elk on private land. And I have nothing against private land. That's a whole nother debate, the public land, private land.
Let's have that debate here in a minute. I want to talk about that.
We will. But, I grew up and I'm super competitive. And, we talk about competition between brand A, brand B. If you own a business and there's a competitor there, you can look at it as it's either me or it's them, or you can look at it as we're going to rise together. Like you mentioned, there can be 2 successful people. There can be 2 successful businesses. Unless you're talking about a gold medal at the Olympics, then maybe that's right. A little different. But in the business scheme, the market keeps growing, and you start a podcast. I've been doing a podcast for a while. There's no competition there. It's not like, oh man, Brinker's podcast is going to encroach on mine or
there is
anybody
1
else.
billion podcasts now, literally.
Well, you were the last person to officially get on the podcast boat, because I think everybody else has one at this point.
Right.
But
yeah.
But no, it's just that whole I'm competitive, but when I'm out hunting, I'm not competing against another hunter. I'm competing against the elk. I'm competing against the mountain. Mm-hmm. And when I'm in business, I'm not competing against another brand or another business or another entrepreneur. I'm competing against myself to grow. I'm competing with my business to grow that business. Mm-hmm. And I had in the world of online education, I had it to myself in the hunting industry for several years. And within the last year or 2, there have been multiple online courses, memberships on education come out. And last year, our revenue grew more than it had in any of the previous 6 years. Mm-hmm. And so it's not like competition is going to take away from your opportunity.
That's what I'm talking about. If you would have asked somebody did a survey, what do you think's Corey's business doing now that there's 5 other online classes or whatever there is? I bet you people would be saying, I bet you, I don't know, man, it's a tough business. And it's like, doing great. That's what I'm talking about. If you just go back to the data, it doesn't, unless you don't have a great brand, product, and relationships with your customers. Like, I'm not saying that a competition can't kill a business, because it can. Yeah. But it's not because of the competition. It's because you allowed your business to get into a place where you weren't providing a product or a service that people valued, or a brand that supported it. It's not because of the competition. It's because it's easy to like scapegoat it. Like, for example, like BlackBerry died because of the iPhone, but not because of the iPhone, but because they didn't think of something better than the iPhone. Like, yep. Do you see what I'm saying? And Blockbuster, Blockbuster was great, but Netflix was in the same boat for a while, but they thought, this DVD thing is not going to last forever. We better figure some shit out, and we better do it quick. And they took a huge risk. They changed the model, and Blockbuster decided to put all of their chips in the DVD rental route. And look at them. They have 1 store in Anchorage now, and I think 1 in Bend, Oregon. But yeah, man, I think it's really, really valuable lesson. But look, you can compete too. Like, right, Corey? Like, it's okay to compete. It's actually fun, especially when it remains friendly. It's just like playing a sport. Like, you both want to kick each other's butts, but you can go get pizza afterwards, right?
Yep.
What's not okay is the sort of gross stuff that happens. You know, the talking behind people's backs and name calling and wanting another business to fail that has people that put their money into it or their family's money into it, or like in some cases refinance their house, like whatever it might be. Like, those people have risks too. So I don't know. And I've gotten hammered for this, Corey. Like, I remember having really heated debates with people when I was at Sitka, and even outside of that don't agree with my mentality on this.
Yeah.
They're like, no, we are here to kill other brands.
Yep.
We do not
it's
want
either us or them.
Yep.
It can't be a combination. We both can't exist. We're either
And I'm just like, I just don't see the data that proves that, where you can't put it back on the product or service or the brand. Like, you can't, like, and show me an example, but I could be wrong. But in the industries that I've been in, which are very small, you know, maybe it's not, but in the hunting industry, the brands that have failed that I've watched aren't because there was competition. That's a really lame excuse.
Yep. Yeah, you just look, I mean, you can name clothing, you can name boots, you can name backpacks, elk calls, whatever it is. There's always been multiples.
Right.
I mean, you look clear by elk calls back in the early 80s. There's Larry D. Jones, there's Wayne Carlton, and then if you count how many elk call manufacturers there are now, there's probably 20 or more. Mm-hmm. And there's some that are bigger than others, but nobody is limiting anybody. No. It goes back to that bigger piece of the pie. Last year, online course, sales in the hunting industry, you see all these people coming out doing it. Sales for everybody should have been growing. And if they weren't, it's not because of competition. It's because they didn't know how to capitalize on that pie that got bigger last year. Mm-hmm. The pie got bigger. There's no doubt the pie last year got bigger.
Yeah. Or they stopped innovating. Maybe they got stuck, or, sometimes, I mean, businesses fail because they run out of money. Like, there's lots of reasons, but I'm just not sold on the fallback reason everybody has. It's like, well, if they wouldn't have came in, then, this, it's like, whatever, man, that's like so insecure.
Yep.
And, I wanted to ask you about one of the things that I talked to somebody the other day about was on the whole private land, public land debate. Obviously we are all public land advocates, because without public land, hunting basically dies.
It does.
It's and it's not just for hunting. Recreation outside is very hard to come by. If for those of you who've lived in states where there's not a lot of public land, like I lived in California for a while, down in the North Bay, there's very little public land. And so, like, even going out to hike on a trail or just get outside, you basically are limited to if you have access to a private property or you go to a park, right? Or you live in like the great state of Idaho or Montana, where there's trailheads around every corner and there's millions of acres of public land. It's very, very important that we protect that. But also at the same time, I don't think it's very helpful to bash private landowners. And I think more people need to realize that private land is just as important as public land. You need both. And here's my argument why, and I want you to tell me if I'm right or wrong on this, okay? One of the reasons why, beyond, there's a multitude of reasons, but specifically for hunting, let's talk about that, is because no matter if they want to admit it or not, most people that are hunting on public land choose to hunt just by coincidence right behind big ranches. Do you know why they do that? They do that because a lot of times bulls can get older. They have better winter range. They have safety and security on private land. And some of the best habitat is also on private land. Like, let's not kid ourselves. There's good habitat on both. But the reality is like a lot of the animals we are hunting at some point in the year use private land too as part of their, whether it's their migratory route or their winter ground or their summer ground, whatever it is. Like, I just think they're both important. And I think it's very unhelpful for this like hardcore public land guy to be bashing the guy that just wants to raise cattle. Like, they both have issues they need to work on, and they need to, it's just like anything else, like Republican, Democrat, whatever, black and white. It's not that easy, right?
Yeah.
Is my hypothesis wrong?
No, they're both, highly important. And I think that the nice thing about private land is it's not strapped down in bureaucracy for how it can be managed, and I think a lot of times our public lands get abused, get mismanaged, get undermanaged, just because of them being run by a government. Mm-hmm. And you get private land that's not, and they can choose to manage it in a way that can be beneficial for wildlife. But, and I think that there's the people who look at private land and say, well, I'm a public land hunter. It'd sure be nice to be able to hunt private land. If I did, I'd kill big elk every year. I've hunted on private land. I've never, not for myself necessarily, but I've been on hunts on private land. And some of those, I have left private land to go look for public land because the hunting was so bad on private. So it's not a matter of being private or public. There's absolutely some advantages on some private lands where the animals are less pressured, where there's a higher density of the animals there, and it might make hunting, I won't say easier. It might give you more opportunities for success there. But I hear all the time, oh, he shot it on private land, so it doesn't really count. It's different. If he had shot it on public land, that'd be a big bull. But for private land, it's just, doesn't really matter. It's almost
I still haven't met anybody that says those things that would turn down an offer to go hunt on some of those ranches.
Yeah, and I'm in that. I'm 100% a public land elk hunter. For myself. But that doesn't mean that I don't daydream about, when I'm on public land, I'm not sitting there going, we haven't heard an elk bugle for 2 days. It'd sure be nice to be somewhere where they're managed a little better. And I'll go. There's no doubt in my mind, I will hunt elk on private land at some point. And it's not because I haven't been offered to. I've turned down some pretty amazing offers to hunt elk on private land. But my focus right now is on showing people, hopefully inspiring people, that it can be done on public land, that this is a resource we have to protect, that this is something that is important. And if we all start just looking for the easy way out and going to private land, as our escape from the challenges of hunting on public land, we're going to lose that. And so it's so important to be motivated to keep what we have and to find success on that platform.
I am not 100% public land hunter. I hunt on both. By nature of where I live in Oregon, especially now, a lot of times you're hunting private timberland, and
totally.
A lot of the private timberland is closed to the public. A lot of it's also open to the public, usually walk-in. But most of the mountains to the west of me on the Coast Range, there's some national forest and BLM, but a lot of it's owned by Weyerhaeuser or what other private timber companies. So you have to get permission. So I still consider that private land that has public access, but I've hunted on ranches that were amazing that I can't even begin to explain how amazing they were. But I've also had the best experiences of my life elk hunting on public land. And like you said, Corey, even when you came out to Oregon, we were hunting on publicly accessible private land part of the time, and then a national forest part of the time. We had better hunting on the national forest, or at least you had better hunting on the national forest. I think I had by that time stabbed my leg, but that's a whole nother podcast.
I wasn't even going to bring that up.
I just think, I'm just kind of tired of how everything is so black and white today. And I'm just as much of a public land advocate as anybody in my private life. I'm not out there like I'm not beating down Congress's door, and I appreciate there's people that do that. I don't do that. I should do more of that. But I do believe in public land, and I do believe in private land, and I think that's okay. Just like I'm willing to have a podcast with a Democrat when I consider myself a Republican. I think it's pretty important that we kind of work together on specifically this issue. So we keep our public lands, but we also don't piss off private landowners so much that they just want to buy all the public land, because that's what some of them want to do that. Like, I mean, so, I just think it's a fun topic to talk about. It's controversial to some. I think it's just a conversation worth having,
Yeah. No, and I really think, you're right on that. We've got to be more tolerant for other views, not at all giving in to things that threaten our views, but just being more willing to realize that, hey, this person over here doesn't hunt. They have no desire to ever hunt. They're never going to be a hunter. That doesn't mean that they're against us. That doesn't mean it's them versus us. We just need to be, willing to listen to what they're saying, in hopes that maybe they'll listen to what we're saying. I did a podcast the other day on a platform that is not hunting related at all. And the host asked me, what do you say to people who are listening to this? Because the majority of the people listening aren't hunters. We've been talking about the business side of this and how you've kind of, found a niche here. But what do you say to the people who don't agree with hunting? And it'd be really easy to say, well, they're ignorant, or, call names, or whatever it is. And I said, you know what, I 100% agree that it's not for everyone, that not everybody's going to see it the same way I do. But here's how I see it. I grew up hunting. It's a tradition. It's a way to spend time with family, whether it's going to the park and feeding the ducks every Saturday. For some families, for me and my family, it was going hunting, and that's where we bonded. That's where we created, relationships. That's where we had conversations we wouldn't have had anywhere else. And I want to perpetuate that. I want my children to have those experiences. Beyond that, I'm passionate about wildlife, and believe it or not, hunting is the most effective platform you're ever going to find to perpetuate wildlife, to conserve wildlife. And you can't argue any other way. It might be, it might sound backwards to say, I'm going to go and kill an elk to make sure that there's elk here tomorrow. But that's exactly what hunting does. That's the job of hunting, is to manage. That's why there's wildlife and hunting and fishing departments in every state. Their job is to manage wildlife, and not to kill all the wildlife, but to make sure that there's wildlife here tomorrow and 100 years from now. And yeah, you could look at it and say, well, it's not the most humane way to get your food. Well, it's a lot better than what Mother Nature deals out there, because nature is not fun. And you're going to have these huge swings up and down. You throw in the fact that we've encroached on habitat, that development, that mismanagement of habitat, all these things, coupled with nature trying to manage itself now, that's a disaster. It's just not going to happen. So, right. We love animals. We care about these animals. I want elk. I want there to be more elk in 100 years than there is right now, by a lot. So if I just didn't go out and hunt, would that happen? Well, me by myself, maybe not. But if hunters weren't allowed to hunt, all of the revenue that's created and generated through conservation, through sales of tags and licenses, through sales of gear, all of that revenue's gone. There's nobody left to manage the wildlife. They're left to their own, they've got to survive on their own, and it's just not going to happen. So for somebody who doesn't hunt, I don't want to convince them to hunt. I wouldn't try to say, you need to be a hunter. What I would try to say is, hey, you've got to understand, hunting is what is best for the wildlife long term. Yeah, there's some sacrifice that's going to be made. And for somebody who just doesn't want to see a single drop of blood shed, that's a pretty big sacrifice. But looking long term, we're trying to grow this. We're trying to make sure that these animals are protected forever. And hunting is a way that allows me to spend time in the outdoors, which I love, to spend time with my family, to put organic, good, healthy food on the table for my family, all of these things. And I think just having that conversation, there's so many people wanting to argue, so many people that get on Instagram and make controversial posts saying, hey, all you anti-hunters or whatever that follow me, here's a picture for you. And they try to get that shock and awe. They try to create controversy there rather than trying to educate.
Meanwhile, the real reason they're doing it is to get likes and followers.
Yeah.
They're not like any sentient human being would know that that's not the greatest way to actually correct a problem, right?
Yep.
And it seems like, though, there's been a bit of a shift the last 5-10 years around how many people are willing to, like, because hunting has changed a lot. Like 20 years ago, it still was, considered Walmart, redneck, buy a half rack of beer, shoot a deer out of the back of the truck. And as gear changed and mentality changed, and I'd like to think that we have had, you and I and a lot of other people, have had something to do with this sort of image, not even an image change, more of a realistic image has been placed like around, like the more emotional side, the conservation side being more highlighted, and maybe social media and the platforms we all have now to talk about it have become more apparent. But I still think we fall into the same problem, Corey. I still think that we spend a lot of time talking to each other about it because we're comfortable. When, like I said this to Ben O'Brien the other day, we were on the podcast, in Oregon, where I am now, whether I like it or you like it, Portland and Eugene make all of our wildlife decisions.
Yep.
And I don't like that, but I could choose to be like, screw them. They're all liberals. It's the blue cities and, Hillary Clinton and Jeffrey Epstein. Or we could figure out ways to not compromise, but have productive conversations. And when we need to fight and like pull out all the weapons, not literally, but you know what I'm saying? We do that. We do that like they're doing in Washington when they struck down the spring bear thing. There was a lot of people that stood up, and now they're at least reconsidering, at least I think. But you just can't be ignorant. The people that control the future of hunting are not hunters.
Yeah. And especially if hunters don't get involved.
That's what I mean. They're not.
Yeah, they're not going to have a say in it.
Yeah. I mean, hunters have the power to save the future of hunting. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, since most of the votes for most of this stuff, unfortunately, because people pick and choose when they want to listen to science, lie in the major metropolitan areas, especially in the more liberal states like California and Oregon and Washington. Like, we're just going to be keep being dealt L's unless we stop preaching to the choir so much and start thinking about how we can all work together to keep a positive image of hunting and really put out the truth and make people realize that it's not this. I mean, yes, there are poachers and there are rednecks that shoot deer out of the back of the truck with half rack of Miller Lite. Not saying there's not, but I'd say by and large, hunting has become more, especially with the whole field to table movement, the whole organic movement. Like, we have a huge opportunity to bridge that gap because people understand wanting to know where their meat comes from, for example. Now, I'm not one of these people that's going to sit here and tell you that the only reason I hunt is for meat, because it's not. I love the meat, but I also love the adventure. But a lot of people understand knowing where meat comes from now. So why don't we use that as an avenue for, well, just be one example, or like the public land thing. Instead of just beating up the libs all the time, or like the granolas or the tree huggers, why don't we go, hey, they like mountain biking out there, they like canoeing out there, or river rafting, or hiking, or whatever on those public lands. Yeah, we may not agree on hunting, but we should at least be able to sit in a room and argue for the same thing. Like, we don't have to agree on hunting. To your point, we don't have to. You don't have to like it. Don't do it. Leave me alone, but don't do it.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah, and I think that's just it. We don't have to agree, but I think if we each understand the other side, why is it that some people are completely turned away by the redneck vision of hunting? The driving around the back of your truck and drinking beer. Well, that's a pretty easy one for most of us to understand why you'd be turned off from it. But I've talked to so many people who aren't hunters, And, I mean, there's that radical 5% or whatever it doesn't matter what you tell them. They're going to believe that, and they're going to be out there with signs and posters and, doing all that. That's not the people we're trying to reach. It's the 90% of people in the middle who don't have an opinion one way or another, or maybe have an opinion, but it's not, so strong that they aren't willing to listen and learn and be educated on it. And those are the ones that I think we have to be careful. And, to your point on decisions being made in Portland and Eugene for Oregon, we're to a point now where we've seen it this year in Montana, in Idaho, in all these states, Colorado. It's the legislature that is making the decisions for wildlife management.
I misspoke. It's actually Salem in this case because Salem's our capital. But you get the people that vote is what I meant. And
so by that, though, the people who vote are the ones who put these people into office.
Right.
But it can be one person that decides to introduce a bill that gets pushed through. We just saw it here in Idaho. We have a Fish and Game Commission that's job is to decide on the management of wildlife and to make the regulations in the best interest of wildlife and sportsmen in Idaho. They're appointed by the governor. So the governor's job is to appoint a commission whose job is to then manage the wildlife. We had a bill introduced this year by a legislator who one of his constituents felt like they weren't being heard by the commission. Well, basically, they didn't agree with the commission's decision on something last year. So they went around the process, convinced this legislator to introduce a bill. He did. In the purpose of the bill, it was completely misleading. It's lighted nocks and mechanical broadheads. Idaho's like the last state to not allow lighted nocks. And I'm not a proponent for or against. I could care less. I probably wouldn't use either, but I don't have a problem if somebody else does. But it was turned down last year by the Fish and Game Commission for a lot of reasons, and they were valid reasons. But this person didn't like the reasons, and the legislator didn't have a clues, not even a bow hunter, pushed it through, it passed, and it was signed by the governor. The governor signed a bill that circumvented the very process that he's in charge of protecting. And we're seeing that more and more. And those things completely out of our control. No matter how many people, voice things and send emails and phone calls to the legislators, to the Senate and the House, they're still going to vote on it based on what they think is good. And we could lose opportunity really easily. And that's scary to me to see how it's set up and how people are going. They're seeing success in that route, going around the Fish and Game Commissions, the Fish and Game departments, and just going straight to the Capitol. And
we see that scary. A lot now with presidents too, whether that be Trump or Biden.
Totally.
I mean, we're just writing executive orders every other day. We don't like something that won't go through. Executive order. It's like executive order. And that's been happening for a while. I'm no expert on Washington, D.C., but I've definitely been paying attention to that more. It seems like just as a whole, our country, a lot of the processes are breaking down because they're so divided and so just kind of black and white. I can't get something done this way. I'm circumventing the whole process because this is what my constituents want. And the people that, I could see that happening on the hunting and wildlife side too, for sure. I'm guilty as anybody. I need to figure out ways to get more involved. I'm busy, and it's no good excuse. But I'm hoping through this podcast I can learn more from people. Like tomorrow, I have Randy on, and people like you and whoever else. I'll have the CEO of RMEF pretty soon. I'm trying to learn more and be a better advocate, but I'm not willing to be so black and white about everything.
Totally.
I want to figure out a more productive way to go at it. And I just don't see another future that's positive.
Yeah. No, and it comes down to, even within the hunting community, we talk about Kuyu versus Sitka. We talk about traditional versus modern archery. We talk about archery versus rifle. There are so many ways that we can divide ourselves, that it doesn't make sense. And you see that, well, he wears Sitka and he uses a Stone Glacier pack and he wears Zamberlan boots and he shoots a Matthews bow. Well, I wear 3 of those products, but I shoot a prime bow. So that guy, he's not on my team. He's on another team. And everybody who follows him is an enemy to me. And, it's just, we're so divided and so divisive. We're looking for ways to divide ourselves from people.
And it's crazy
rather than build.
If you actually think about how spoiled that is, that we have the liberty and the time to worry about who's wearing what brand of boots and backpack to hunt freely on our public lands. When you actually start thinking about it, it's coming from a very privileged place, because we're all so privileged to have these liberties. Like, turn on the news, watch what's happening in Ukraine right now, whether you like it.
They aren't fighting about which backpack they're wearing.
They're fighting actually for something that actually matters. And I'm not saying I agree or disagree with anything. I don't want to get into that. But the point is those arguments that we have amongst ourselves are so petty and stupid. And believe me, I've spent years of my life right in the middle of the mucky muck. Like, I know. And I still work with brands where you want to see people using your products, and it makes you feel insecure or bad when you're like, well, why does that guy not use my product? Does he think ours suck? Like, are we failing? You have all these thoughts. So I'm not saying that we're not all human, but the point of it all is just, there's got to be a way to have more constructive conversations about everything and not worry about so much of the bullshit minutia when there's actually real fights. Not even to mention that we all have personal lives with families and kids.
And I think that's there. We have so much more in common than we have not in common. I mean, even with somebody who's way out there, they have a family. They're trying to survive. They're trying to feed their family. They're trying to, do things that they want to do, that they feel are beneficial for them. And whether we agree with that or not, that's the beauty of all of this. What a blessing it is to be able to have a choice on what backpack we're going to wear. Let alone what we're going to, do to provide for our family. We have that. We have all that freedom. We have all of those choices. And if it's a competitor, well, good for them. They've made the exact same choice we did to be an entrepreneur, to start a business, to do all of that. There are ways that competing brands can work together and, build a bigger piece of pie and say, hey, we can both benefit from this, rather than saying, gosh, it's either you or me, so I'm going to do everything I can to put you out of business. And really what that comes down to is somebody going around bad mouthing somebody else. They don't actually put any work in trying to put them out of business. They try to create controversy. They try to, win over friends and fans and likes instead of, working hard on their own business.
Divisiveness is a profitable strategy.
Yeah.
People love controversy. People love like really strong controversial statements and, this persona. If you can create it, like look at Colby Covington on the UFC. Do you follow UFC at all?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay. Or Conor McGregor, maybe a better example, right? He made a great living being controversial and saying awful, horrible things. That's one strategy for sure. It depends on how you measure yourself, I guess. Or you can kind of, be more like a Khabib, for example, on the UFC side, who like conducts himself a little bit more respectfully, but also is the greatest fighter ever to live and made more money than most fighters ever to live. So maybe
and I was going to say there, with McGregor, he was controversial, but not a single one of his wins came from him being controversial. He still had to go and train. He still had to fight hard. He still had to do all the work.
True. Yes. Win. It wasn't just empty threats. It was, he performed, right?
Yeah. It's just more, he still did the same amount of work as anybody else who was successful. He just had a different personality that, he talked differently about people.
Well, look, my friend, may he rest in peace, Jason Hairston, your friend too.
Yeah.
He was very competitive man. and he was rough to compete against. He hired me at Sitka, and years later when he started Kuyu and I was still in my position at Sitka, he was not a fun person to compete with. He was really good at it, and he approached it differently than me, and we had some disagreements and some rough patches. But I always respected the fact that he could back up what he was saying. He built a very successful company with great products. And, if you're competing against that, that's hard. But you know what? It makes you better.
Yeah.
What's terrible is when people act like that and they're not, like there's no substance to it, right? It's just a strategy to get attention or whatever. So yeah, there's no right or wrong way to do it. But I think I watched a podcast the other day with Ben Shapiro. You ever follow him, Corey?
Yep.
So obviously, to all my liberal friends out there listening, you're probably rolling your eyes. Ben Shapiro, such a conservative.
Wait, you have liberal friends?
I do.
Oh man, well,
my wife is independent / liberal, and I'm very conservative, and we have a great relationship. That's a whole nother topic. But we get in debates all the time. I actually think that's why our relationship is so strong, is because we can challenge each other and come out the other end and hug and kiss and go to bed and forget about it.
And still respect somebody else's point of view.
Every day we have debates. I mean, literally, we try to debate. It's fun. It's not toxic. It's fun. But anyways, I was watching Ben Shapiro's Sunday special last week maybe, and he had on Bill Maher, who's very liberal, but he's not what I would consider woke liberal. Like, he's not just reading from CNN's playbook. Like, he can actually think for himself. And so every once in a while he'll agree with Donald Trump, or he'll agree with Bernie Sanders. You never know where he's coming from, but Ben had him on, and Ben does this, and I think it's cool, and there needs to be more of it politically or in whatever industry you're in our industry, where him and Bill Maher talked for an hour, and they disagree, and a couple times they butt heads, but they laugh the whole way through, and they can probably go get a cup of coffee and a beer afterwards, and they're totally fine.
And talk about something else that they have in common.
They talked about more stuff they have in common on that show than they did on stuff they disagreed with. And I found that interesting. If you actually listen to it, I don't know what the percentage, let's just call it 75% stuff they kind of agree on. Maybe not all the way, and there's some hesitancy, but there was only a couple things where they're like, yeah, man, we're not ever going to agree on that, right? But as a whole, it was a very human, like a really good lesson. I'm like, okay, just watching this, that's really interesting. Here's somebody who I expected to be X, and here's somebody who I know is Y. Here are them having a great conversation. They walk away, they laughed the whole time, they debated. That's what America used to be like. And from the tops of our government all the way into the silly hunting industry, it's all so divisive and crazy. And I'm like you, Corey. I don't like it when people don't like me.
Yeah.
But it drains me. I don't like having contentious debates. I like having like friendly debates. But I've also gotten to the age where I've learned that it's a pretty empty life not speaking your mind and not having people there to challenge you in your life, even though some days it kind of sucks. Those are normally going to be your best relationships. And so maybe that works in like professional life too. Like if you just hire a bunch of people that agree with you, you're going to make some major mistakes.
Yeah.
Because inevitably multiple people are better than one. And so maybe that's the way we should look at our debates around hunting too. And maybe there's stuff we can learn. There's definitely stuff the other side can learn, but together maybe we could be stronger as a pack rather than just beating each other up to death and the whole thing dies.
Yep. Absolutely.
Corey, where can people find more Corey things? Destination Elk.
Yeah. No, we YouTube is our platform for video. Destination Elk, we just wrapped up. I had an opportunity to hunt elk in Alaska last fall, and we're releasing that film. So that'll be on our YouTube channel. And then we do the hunt with Outfitters for Hope every year, where we take youth with a life-threatening illness out elk hunting. And those hunts are life-changing for us, for people who have an opportunity to see it. So, that's probably one of the projects that I'm most excited about each year. And that'll be on YouTube here shortly. Elk 101, anything Elk 101, you can go to elk101.com. You can go to Instagram, Facebook, Elk 101. On YouTube, it's Elk 101. My personal Instagram is CoreyJacobsen.elk101. And that's pretty much, outside of hiding under a rock and going out and looking for antlers and hunting wolves.
Are you finding antlers already?
I have seen a couple of fresh elk antlers already. Most of them are, I'd say 99% are still packing. It's March 16th.
Right.
So.
When do you say, I'm just now learning the shed hunting game, and I'm 41, which is pathetic. But I went out last year with my kids, and it was like the funnest thing we've done together yet. Like my little boy, my little 6-year-old running out through the sagebrush with a smile on his face when he finds a horn was absolutely priceless. Like, yep. I was more excited for that moment than walking up to my bull last year. It was so. When do I know? On that same trip, I saw 5 bulls carrying both sides, and it was April 8th or 9th.
Yep.
What's the date you go, I could go out now and most elk are going to have both sides off?
So I'm going to talk about just the basic horn hunter. Somebody that just goes out that isn't worried about following a specific 390-inch bull that they've been watching all winter. I am the most
basic horn hunter you're ever going to meet. So
I would say 90% of the elk are dropped by April 20th or 25th, somewhere in there. I would say around 20% are going to be dropped the 1st of April. And then it's just kind of progression through the month of April there. But the bigger bulls usually drop first, and then the spikes are the last ones to drop. It's super competitive, though. So, there's people that watch these elk, and as soon as one drops, they run out there and pick it up, and they end up pushing all the elk into, the timber or scattering them. And then every antler after that's harder and harder to find, which is why some states have antler hunting seasons that you can't legally go and pick up antlers before a certain date. But if you were wanting to take your kiddos out, I would say wait until April 20th or so, because, like you said, April 8th or 9th, you're seeing all 5 of the bulls still packing. Probably, younger raghorn average 5s are still going to be packing. Then the bigger 6 points are going to be dropped by probably April 15th. You'll still see some raghorns packing for the next week or two. But
so if you're planning a trip, it's safest, unless you're in a highly competitive area. Let's just say you're in an area that's not super competitive or on private property or something. Really May 1st.
Oh yeah. If you have access to private property where nobody else is going and pushing them around, the best thing you can do is just let them all shed, because then the antlers are going to be more concentrated. They're going to be out in the open, easier to find. Mm-hmm. And by May 1st, most of them should be all shed. And again, that's, we're talking Idaho, Montana, Wyoming. You get down into Arizona, New Mexico, some of those states, they're dropping in February, and by the end of March, most of them have dropped. So,
yeah, in my whole life hunting Roosevelts on the coast, I've found one shed. So this year, I actually have 3 bulls identified. I know where they're living. They've been there the last few years. I just haven't gone down there to try to find their horns. And I know no one else is going to go there because it's on private property that I have access to. I'm going to wait till May 1st, and I might just find my first set of Roosevelt horns, Corey.
Very cool.
And it may or may not be one of the it may or may not be one of the bulls that you called in. So no, that's good information. I feel like, man, shed hunting is one of those things that I really regret not getting into earlier. I just always thought, whatever, man. Like, if I'm going to use time, I'd rather actually be hunting an animal. But just like so many people find, man, it's like almost as stimulating as actually hunting it. You find a brown, like a 6-point brown laying in the sagebrush, your heart races, your adrenaline goes up. You're so stoked. I'm not saying it's the same as killing a 350 bull, but for springtime after being locked indoors all winter, and you have the opportunity to learn more about the elk and like, oh, I found all these bulls here. This is their winter range. They must live up there, right? So you might learn something for hunting season maybe, or it's just the weather's getting nice. I don't know, man. I'm definitely a bigger fan of that now than I am of even spring bear hunting. I would almost rather go shed hunting.
I told somebody yesterday, if I almost hate going on Instagram in April because it's all turkey hunting. And I hate seeing people saying, well, this is just like elk hunting. Turkey hunting is nothing like elk hunting. But yeah, for me, I would go shed hunting 100 times before I'd go turkey hunting.
What do you do with all your horns?
I sell them. I keep the biggest set each year, and then I sell everything else.
For like dog shoes or?
Yeah, we used to have an antler buyer that comes through, and I think that's what he sells them to Petco or somebody. But for me, it's not, my son's a freshman in college this year, and he's talking about, well, Dad, I could just go and do this and not even have a job. I could just make money off of shed hunting. I don't think you'll ever make money off of shed hunting, especially with gas the way it is right now.
Right.
But the enjoyment, the satisfaction, just being out in the spring, the things you get to see out there that you would never see otherwise. I took my puppy. I've got an antler dog that I'm training to pick up antlers, and I took her out shed hunting last Saturday. And we're going down the road, come around the corner, and she's running in front of me, and there's a wolf there eating on a dead deer, and she takes off chasing after the wolf, which of course, it usually doesn't end well. Fortunately, she listened to the electronic collar and turned around and came back. But things like that you would never get to see and experience, a wolf there 30 yards away. And the first day that I've actually left my gun in the truck, I've been wolf hunting all winter, and then I go out shed hunting and leave the gun and see one. But the exercise, the family time, like you said, my children are begging. My son talked about quitting baseball last week so he could shed hunt more this spring. I mean, just those experiences that you just don't get any other way. And there's no limit on it. It's not like elk season. It closes in a month. You can shed hunt pretty much year round in most states.
My kids were better at it than me last year. Like, I don't know if it's because they're shorter and they're like, or if it's because they have more attention to detail, but literally, Corey, not even kidding. I walked by at least 5 different browns. Whether it was I think there was one deadhead and maybe it was like 3 browns and a couple whites. I walked right by and my kids were like, Daddy, look, I found one. I'm like, no, what? I literally just walked by that sagebrush bush. I agree with you. It really is. The other thing one of the things I've always respected about hardcore whitetail hunters out Midwest is they seem to have a more year-round relationship with their quarry, where elk hunters, at least the average elk hunter, like you take your 7 days off in September, you walk into a basin and you call and you develop a relationship with a bull for that 7 days or whatever. But after that, you don't really, you think about it, but it's just different. In the Midwest, they're like planting food plots, they're plowing, they're picking up sheds, they got trail cameras all year. They have names, and so like when I went shed hunting last year, one of the things I realized is that I haven't learned a ton about elk's winter habits and winter range. And like, these elk are out there every day. And we're only out there for like a week a year or whatever for most people, but they're out there every day. And there's a lot to learn that's fun just to know. They're for no other reason than just learning more about the species that you care about. And when we were shed hunting, I'm like, oh, interesting. We're finding most of sheds on these type of slopes with these types of brush. I wonder why they're there. Oh, they eat this type of thing this time of year. That's why they're here. Or this elevation because of the snow or whatever. I just found that I learned a bunch of stuff that I knew, like, I guess, just kind of indirectly, but I hadn't experienced it. And I just think that's cool. It's a new adventure. And it's a new mystery to solve, because now I'm like, okay, how could we find more? Like, how could I replicate that? And how could I find more spots that no one's going to? And so it's like that whole mess.
Yep. No, and it is. And I'm flying in 2 days to look for shed hunting spots. I'm hiring a plane to go up and fly me over some area that,
you
like
hate
you said,
flying.
I don't hate flying. I hate when you used to book my flights for Sitka and you'd fly me through Minneapolis and Tampa Bay to get me from Idaho to Seattle.
Where did I fly? Oh, that's right. I flew you. Corey was coming to Sitka this is when Sitka was in California, and I think I was going to meet you in Oakland, and you had to fly from Boise to or what was it?
I don't remember.
I can't remember. I think you either had to go to like maybe it was Reno or San Jose. It was something so dumb, but it was like $100 cheaper. And there's like early Sitka days before we were a real business. And man, he's always held that against me.
It might have happened more than once too, but even when you moved to Bozeman, I had to fly from Boise to Seattle to Bozeman. I'm like, Brinker, is this just more of your travel magic here?
Yeah, you can't fly direct from Boise to Bozeman, man. I didn't come up with I don't make the rules. I just follow them. Well, Corey, it's been a pleasure talking to you today, man. You're a great friend, and we have so much more we could dive into. So I'd love to do this again.
Absolutely.
And I'm hoping, someday, I promise if you come elk hunting with me, I won't stab myself in the leg again.
Oh, I have no doubt that you won't. And if you do, I'll be more prepared than I was. So I now carry all the essentials for broadhead wounds in the leg.
Well, if people have never heard of that story and want to learn more, because I'm totally humiliated already and embarrassed, and it's out there, you can just search Dave Brinker arrow in the leg on YouTube, and you will find a video that Corey made, of which I proceeded to stab myself in the leg with a broadhead on an elk hunt. It's very entertaining, as if there's not enough embarrassing things to find out about me. I'm promoting that today. That's the sponsor of this show is the episode of.
I think that was our first year of Destination Elk.
It was the first year.
I think we owe a lot of our success to you because hands down, that had to be our most watched episode that season.
I think it still is to this day. And I'm still waiting for my royalty checks.
Yeah. Keep waiting.
Well, Corey, go out and find some sheds. Thanks for listening, folks. Appreciate you. And until next time.
Yep. Thank you.
Well, thanks for tuning into the Altitude Show today. Make sure to get out and support those that support this show. GoHunt.com, PeaksEquipment.com. Also, you can support us by subscribing to our YouTube channel or wherever you listen to podcasts. Subscribe there and leave a 5-star review. Nothing less than 5 stars. We'll see you next week with a new guest. Have a great day, everyone.